Everyone in the city knew Julian Eastwood. Not because he told them who he was, he didn't, but because the second he walked into a room, something about him demanded attention. Tall, sharp-suited, impossibly handsome, and somehow managing to make a briefcase look like a fashion accessory, Julian had it all. Everything, that is, except, well, the thing everyone assumes a man of his age and status definitely has. Before we go on, I would like to kindly ask that you please subscribe to the channel, like the video and drop a nice comment. I really appreciate it as you do. Yes. Julian had never, not once fully, responded to anyone. Ever. Doctors called it curious, friends whispered blessedly convenient, and Julian himself was convinced he had a personal defect, a glitch in the system. For decades, he believed this was a medical anomaly, a tragic quirk in an otherwise perfect life. Then came Lila Benson. Lila was supposed to be just the new cleaning lady at Julian's skyscraper penthouse. At first, Julian didn't notice her. She moved through the vast apartment humming, balancing a mop like a sword, her hair tucked under a messy scarf. But then, something happened. Something ridiculous. Something utterly impossible. Julian looked at her one Tuesday morning, while she was dusting the enormous gold-plated chandelier. Really, who even has one of those? And he felt, well, something he had never ever felt before. His brain immediately went into panic mode. No. This cannot be happening. Maybe I'm dehydrated. Maybe it's the espresso. Maybe it's, no, definitely not real. But it was real. And it wasn't small. From that moment on, Julian's life became a series of absurd, unintentional comedic disasters. He would pass by the kitchen and see her bending to reach the floor, and suddenly he would trip over a rug, knock over a coffee table, or send his laptop sliding off the desk. Every single time. He tried ignoring it. Oh, how he tried. He read books on self-control. He meditated. He even considered moving to a cabin in the middle of the Sahara Desert, thinking maybe he just needed distance from all living humans. But no. Lila was everywhere, humming, sweeping, accidentally leaving a feather duster on the stair rail where he inevitably tripped over it. The building staff began to notice. The elevator operator gave him strange looks. His assistant, poor unsuspecting Gerald, asked one afternoon, "Sir, are you okay? You've been walking into walls a lot this week." Julian forced a laugh. "I'm practicing stealth maneuvers," he said, and nobody questioned it. Not a single soul. Meanwhile, Lila had no idea the chaos she was causing. She continued her work with quiet pride, humming songs Julian had never heard, and occasionally muttering to herself about soap scum and dust bunnies. To her, the billionaire was just a very awkward guy who stared too much. Julian's attempts to handle the situation reached a breaking point when he hired a private trainer. Surely, physical fitness would distract him. Surely, extreme workouts and strict schedules would allow him to regain control. But during the first training session, Lila walked past the gym door to deliver a new mop for cleaning the lobby windows. Julian, mid-plank, looked up. Disaster. The trainer stopped counting and asked if he was okay. Julian just muttered something about unexpected variables, and nearly passed out. By now, Julian had accepted something. This was not a medical condition. This was not something he could fix. This was Lila. The problem was, he had no clue how to deal with it. Every attempt at sophistication ended in humiliation. Every serious meeting with investors ended with him suddenly realizing that he had to think about her. Then came the day he decided to speak to her. A simple greeting, he told himself. Just a hello, and maybe a compliment about the sparkling floor. But as she turned, smiling and humming a song about a mop and a bucket, Julian froze. He fumbled, tripped over his own shoe, and somehow managed to spill a cup of espresso all over himself. Lila, without missing a beat, said, "Oh. Don't worry, Mr. Eastwood. Happens to the best of us." She smiled innocently, as if the catastrophe he had just caused was entirely his own doing. Julian, on the other hand, considered moving to Antarctica. That was when Julian realized two things. One, he was completely undone by Lila, and two, this was going to be the most ridiculous, uncontrollable and entertaining chapter of his life yet. Julian tried to regain control, but control had apparently gone on vacation. Every time Lila appeared in the penthouse, carrying cleaning supplies, rearranging a vase, humming a tune, he was undone. He started leaving post-it notes with ridiculous reminders all over the apartment. Do not trip over Lila, do not stare at Lila, do not fall for Lila. The notes helped exactly 0%. Sometimes he even caught himself talking to the notes. I mean it this time, Julian. Focus. Focus. Things got worse when Julian's friends began noticing. He had a small circle of people he trusted, mostly other wealthy, handsome, occasionally overconfident men, and they were baffled. One evening, over an expensive bottle of wine at a rooftop bar, his friend Edward leaned back in his chair and asked, Julian, are you okay? You look distracted. Julian tried to play it cool. Distracted? Who, me? He waved his hand vaguely. No, I'm perfectly fine. Just contemplating the universe. Edward squinted. Contemplating the universe, huh? You've been walking into walls a lot lately. Even tripped over your own shoe in the elevator yesterday. That's not universal contemplation, my friend. That's something else. Julian could only mutter, perhaps it's gravity. It wasn't gravity. It was Lila. The next week, he attempted something drastic, avoidance. If he couldn't control himself around her, perhaps he could simply avoid her. Julian rearranged his schedule, avoided the kitchen during her shifts, even considered eating out more often. But life seemed to have a twisted sense of humor. No matter what he did, she was always there. Always in the background, sweeping, dusting, humming, making him lose all sense of dignity. One particular morning, he had carefully planned a solo breakfast in the conference room to avoid her entirely. Success, he thought, as he sipped his espresso in private. Then the fire alarm went off. Smoke from the oven in the kitchen triggered the sensors, and Julian rushed in to see what was happening, only to find Lila calmly carrying a tray of burnt toast, completely oblivious to the chaos she had caused. Julian froze mid-step, nearly dropping his espresso. He realized, in that precise moment, that there was no escaping this. Lila had become a constant, uncontrollable presence in his life. And more than that, she had revealed something he had never known about himself. He was capable of feeling, of reacting, and of actually caring about someone in a way that terrified him. Julian's attempts at rational thinking collapsed completely when Lila invited him to help with a minor repair in the penthouse, a dripping faucet that had been ignored for weeks. He agreed, convincing himself it was simply responsible property management. But as they crouched side by side under the sink, their shoulders brushing, Julian's heart started racing, his hands shook, and he realized he might actually be laughing nervously at jokes she hadn't even told yet. The situation reached peak absurdity during one evening when Julian, in a heroic attempt to act normal, tried to cook dinner for himself to impress Lila. He managed to set off the smoke detector, spill olive oil all over the floor, and break a plate, all while Lila casually swept past, humming her tune, giving him one of those innocent looks that made him forget every word of caution he had ever known. Julian began to notice that even minor things, like Lila's laugh echoing across the marble floors, or the way she pushed her hair behind her ear, sent him into a state of comical panic. He started rehearsing conversations in his head, planning casual remarks, and timing when to pass by the kitchen just so he could look unintentional. And still, none of it worked. Each interaction was unpredictably chaotic, messy, and somehow perfect. Eventually, Julian understood that this situation would require a new strategy entirely. He couldn't run, he couldn't hide, and he couldn't act like a proper billionaire adult with control over everything. He had to embrace the ridiculousness of it all. He started intentionally leaving little gifts on her workspace, a fancy pen with a note saying "For your meticulous list-making," a small box of chocolates labeled "Emergency Sweets," a funny coffee mug with a pun she might enjoy. Lila responded in her own way, leaving little notes of thanks, teasing comments, and once, a perfectly folded napkin with a scribbled doodle of Julian tripping over something. She didn't know she had completely invaded his carefully controlled world, nor did she know that Julian had begun planning his entire day around the chance of seeing her. And as Julian lay awake at night, thinking of what absurd catastrophe might happen the next day, he realized that for the first time in his life, chaos was not terrifying, it was exhilarating. He had no idea where this would go, but the truth was clear: no matter what happened, Lila had already changed him. She had made his life unpredictable, funny, and strangely warm, in ways no amount of money, control, or planning ever could. From that point on, Julian stopped trying to be perfect. He stopped trying to hide. Instead, he stumbled, tripped, laughed, and occasionally panicked, fully, completely, and hilariously in love. Over the next few weeks, the penthouse became a stage for Julian's ongoing disasters. One morning, he tried to act nonchalant while carrying a tray of breakfast for Lila. He had rehearsed every step, every glance, every word. And yet, the moment she looked up from dusting a corner, he tripped on the rug, sending a perfectly stacked tower of croissants flying across the floor. Lila's laughter rang out, echoing off the marble walls, while Julian groaned, cheeks flaming. He had fully accepted that dignity was a thing of the past. Then came the day Julian finally decided that subtlety was pointless. He couldn't hide his feelings any longer. He cornered her carefully, so it didn't look like stalking, and simply said, "Lila, I think I'm completely ruined by you." Lila blinked, tilting her head. "Ruined how?" Julian hesitated. He opened his mouth, closed it, gestured vaguely with his hands, and finally admitted, completely, utterly, and absurdly ruined. She laughed again, that same disarming laugh, and stepped closer, brushing a stray speck of flour from his shoulder. "Well," she said, "at least it's entertaining." And just like that, Julian realized that she had already won. Not through charm, not through wealth or manipulation, but by simply being herself, awkwardly human, irreverently cheerful, and completely unbothered by the chaos she caused. From that moment, life became delightfully unpredictable. Julian no longer tried to control his reactions. If he tripped, Lila laughed. If he blushed, she smiled. If he spilled coffee, she handed him a towel without judgment. Their days became a series of small, absurd adventures, burnt toast experiments, accidental mop duels, and improvised tea ceremonies that always ended in laughter. Julian Eastwood, the billionaire who had once believed himself uniquely incapable, discovered something remarkable. When life is messy, awkward, and unpredictable, it can also be hilarious, tender, and completely enchanting. Lila didn't just make him feel things he had never felt, she made him embrace the chaos, the comedy, and the absurdity of being human. And so, in a penthouse filled with spilled coffee, scattered post-it notes, and the faint smell of breakfast, Julian finally accepted the truth. Lila had unlocked something no amount of wealth, power, or careful planning ever could. Life might be messy, ridiculous, and unpredictable, but for the first time, Julian realized that was exactly how it was meant to be. He tripped over a rug the next morning while trying to make her breakfast. She laughed, and for the first time, Julian didn't care. Not a bit. He was, officially, completely and hilariously in love.